This is TWiT.
So I thought a really good blog piece. I wanted to share this with you. Not crazy about the name of the blog, assassinateyou.net. It's the blog of the assassin. But it's actually,
all right.
Yeah, he's actually, he or she. Actually, that's a good question. I don't know. It's hard to tell with the ninja outfit. You know, it doesn't say.
I didn't understand this one on the rundown. I didn't.
Let me explain it. So you may remember that GitHub took down a very popular open source YouTube downloader, YouTube-DL. But they took it down for a very interesting reason. They got a DMCA complaint. Now, normally from the RIAA, the Recording Industry Association of America, normally these DMCA complaints are, it's copyright violation. That's not what the DMCA takedown was. They wanted to have it taken down because, let me see if I can find the exact phrase. Essentially, because it was bypassing copy protection. So when it happened, there were, of course, a lot of users of YouTube DL who were very upset. The Electronic Frontier Foundation weighed in. They filed a counter notice explaining why the RIAA's takedown was itself an abuse of the DMCA and it was not justified at all. The YouTube DL code repository had zero infringing material. The RIAA claimed that the primary purpose was to infringe copyright of artists represented by the RIAA whose songs were on YouTube. That is not obviously the primary purpose. It's a YouTube downloader. You can use it to download this show. The one little mistake they probably made, that the project made, is they had test code which would download snippets of songs from YouTube. That was test code that was not seen by regular users. It was just seen by coders who were working with it. It was a way to test it. And the EFF said, even that is a form of fair use and allowed. So the EFF's counter notice was necessary. Even when GitHub was doing it, they said, yeah, we don't want to do this. We're sorry, but we feel like we have to. And so once the EFF filed its counter notice, it gave GitHub the excuse to, oh, okay, we're going to put it back. GitHub reinstated the repository. And importantly, when this one's complicated. If you're a coder, you understand what Git does. GitHub, which is the software, which is the hosting of the software called Git. There's other places you can host it. But besides saving the code, it saves all this metadata about who uploaded it, which code replaces which code, what's more recent than others. This metadata is at least as important as the code. You know, probably other people have the code, but that metadata, pull requests, bug reports are vital. And so the reinstatement of that was important. Otherwise, it would have been easy for YouTube-DL to move to GitLab or do their own thing or whatever. So his point is, whew, we were saved. It was a bogus takedown anyway. But he also said, folks, this is why if you're an open source project, you shouldn't just put it up on GitHub and think you're done, because if you do get pulled down and you lose all that metadata, that could be disastrous for any open source project. He writes, maintainers who host their projects on large proprietary platforms like GitHub or GitLab should always have a strategy for such situations. They need to set up mirrors proactively. You've got to back up metadata, which is really, really hard. The free software community should prepare themselves better in the future. So, good news that it will be of general interest. The YouTube downloader is safe and is up, and thanks to the EFF for doing that. But also news a little more of less interest to the general public. But an important thing to understand is if you are putting stuff on GitHub or GitLab or any big public repository, you've got to also have a strategy for keeping that stuff safe in case this happens to you.
I like the mention about having some type of contingency plan, because it seems like that's why someone would use GitHub, is because of how difficult it is to back up all of that information. Right. What do you suggest as a contingency? Because
I'm not an expert on this. He suggests a tool called Gitia or Giti. He said that's not necessarily the perfect solution. There's an experimental tool called Gitbug. But his point really is kind of more like a call to the open source community. We gotta think about this and figure this out. Right. And it's, no thanks to the RIAA, which is just notorious in all this stuff.
Yeah, they're not nice people.
No, thanks to the EFF for solving it.
They're nice people.
They're nice people. So good news. People were still able to use the YouTube downloader in other ways and so forth, but it's good. It's still up there.